When the final shape launched, we saw a ton of new things brought to Destiny 2, one of those being an exotic weapon called Ergo Sum. If you were like me, you would have seen that this sword was not only a special weapon, but can also get different exotic perks and even different frames. I saw this and was jumping with joy about all of the different possibilities and different combinations, but then I remembered it was a sword, and I quickly put it in my vault where it sat for the next 2 months. Until about 3 weeks ago when I got a build submission that revolved purely around using Ergo Sum. After playing with that build, I've done a 180. This sword has quickly become my most used weapon. Let's get into it. Ergo Sum is a very unique weapon. It's the only special sword, it's the only exotic weapon that can roll with random perks, and it's the only weapon that can roll with random frames. This is both a good and a not so good thing. The good thing is that this sword can get some fantastic combinations that put out a ton of damage for a special weapon, but this does make it incredibly hard to get that god roll. So in this video, I'll be going over a few different rolls that I have fallen in love with. So you might be asking, what makes this weapon so special? Why is it that I can't stop using it? Well, to answer that question, we need to look at two different things. Number one, flexibility. And number two, something I like to call power ratio. When putting together builds, figuring out what weapons to use can be a big part of it. With Ergo Sum, there's so many different versions of that sword that it fits into almost any build. With an Arc Conductor roll, we can run around slaying enemies up close. With Caster and Wave Frames, we can stun champions from far away. And with perks like Wolfpack Rounds, Unplanned Reprieve, and the Perfect Fifth, we can either buff our team or straight up deal a ton of damage. Having this versatility means that we can use our primary and heavy slot to fill whatever roles we need them to. Need more generic damage? Bring a grenade launcher. Need more precision damage? Bring a sniper or a linear. And that gives this weapon such flexibility for all of our weapons. So the second reason this weapon is so strong is that power ratio that I mentioned. And what I mean by that is how much damage it does and for what cost. For example, rockets deal a ton of power, but for little ammo. Snipers deal a little bit less damage, but in turn you get more ammo. And primary weapons generate little power, but you get infinite ammo. Most builds bring a combo of a primary, special, and heavy weapon in order to balance that power to ammo ratio. The thing is, with Ergo Sum, you can pretty much throw that out the window. It generates so much power for how much ammo that you actually get from it. With perks like Arc Conductor, it almost feels hard to run out of ammo. And there's two reasons for that. Number one, with the exotic catalyst, you generate 3 ammo for every prismatic grenade hit. This weapon already excels at ad clearing, and it will be giving you extra transcendent energy per kill, meaning that every time you start to get low on ammo, you'll have that transcendence ready to create even more ammo. The second reason is that this season we have an artifact perk called Blade Stamina, so that rapid kills with swords generate 3 ammo. Again, with perks like Arc Conductor and Unplanned Reprieve, it's incredibly easy to get multi-kills, which allows you to create near infinite ammo. And because we have so much ammo, we can run any heavy and bring another special if you want to. But the main point is that this weapon takes over as your primary weapon that you'll be using, since it has such a high power ratio and gives you a ton of transcendent energy. So let's talk about a few different god rolls and even some builds that you can pair it with. When it comes to choosing what role you want, there are a few things you need to consider: exotic perks, what frame you want, and its purpose. Starting with exotic perks, Arc Conductor is definitely one of my favorites, allowing you to use your heavy attack to start releasing chain lightning in a small area around you, and also giving you 50% extra arc damage resistance. This perk is perfect for those ad dense environments, giving you extra damage resistance to stay alive and AoE damage to mass elite enemies. Another perk I really love is Unplanned Reprieve. Heavy attacks now release Telesto bolts in an area that deal pretty decent damage. The extra damage is not only good for melting champions, but also for generic ad clear. And since this is a void only option, we can pair it with fragments like Facet of Bravery to add in volatile explosions. And the Perfect Fifth is another role that I really like, but is only good in the right scenario. Scoring 5 hits on an enemy will attach an explosive that will deal damage and apply Scorch. Normally, it's hard to keep applying hits, but with the caster frame, you leave behind a pool that will continuously damage a target, leading to that explosion. And this means you basically need a caster frame, but with it, you can deal explosive damage at range. You can can also run with the Wolfpack rounds, but that's more of a team-based scenario. All of these perks are great in both team-based and solo play, but it was worth mentioning Wolfpack rounds in case you are running with a team of swords. So what frames are even worth your time? Well, the first frame I want to touch on is caster frame. The biggest problem with swords is not being able to deal damage at range, and with the caster frame, you can easily use this weapon in any scenario, but it usually means that it'll deal slightly less damage. Wave frames are also a ton of fun and honestly pretty strong. Not only do you now get to send out a wave that will deal damage, making it super strong for ad clearing, but with rolls like Unplanned Reprieve, you can deal extra damage at range since the Telesto bolts come out at the end of that wave. These wave frames are my favorite rolls for ad clearing and stunning champions. The Vorpal frames are your boss and mini boss melting weapons. With rolls like Unplanned Reprieve, you can put out 197,000 DPS, which rivals that of most heavy weapons. Keep in mind that this does rely on you being able to get up close and personal with the enemy that you want to hit. So when choosing what role to go for, keep in mind its purpose. I love the caster frame for Arc Conductor for generic ad clear. The Vorpal role with Unplanned Reprieve is the best close range DPS, but I also love the wave frame Unplanned Reprieve so that I can use it for both ad clearing and DPS by mixing in volatile rounds as well. Or you can bring the perfect fifth with the caster frame, which is one of my favorite ranged versions, giving you a balance of good DPS and easy damage at range. Keep in mind that for the God role, all of these you'll want to get Enduring Blade for the extra ammo and Swordsmaster Guard for the extra charge rate, but it's not really necessary, but it does make each of these roles slightly better. So let's talk about some builds that you can pair with these roles. Titans, in my opinion, are the second best class for Ergo Sum, mainly since Titans excel at getting in the face of your enemies, which is what you tend to want to do with a sword. For your super, you want to bring Twilight Arsenal, since it's all around the best, giving you a ton of damage, adding in Weaken, and using it at range. I like to make the rest of my build a different version of the Consecration Titan, bringing the Pulse Grenade paired with Facet of Dominance to deal good damage, and Frenzy Blade paired with Consecration to put out a ton of AoE ignition damage. I do also like to bring Unbreakable as my second aspect. You could bring Knockout instead, but since it's harder to use melees with a sword, I opted for Unbreakable as a get out of jail free card, allowing you to tank a ton of damage and generate overshield at a moment's notice, even when still using your sword. I then bring Facet of Protection for extra damage resistance and Facet of Purpose to get a bit more survivability. Then I bring Facet of Bravery and Courage so that I can use my grenades to get volatile rounds for those void Ergo Sums. And then I can use my powered melee to get unraveling rounds for my strand backup weapon. This also means we'll be dealing more damage with all of our abilities on enemies that we unravel. And finally, I bring Facet of Honor so that I can use any tangles we generate to get a ton of darkness energy for my transcendence. Overload and Unstoppable champions are a breeze since our normal grenades will jolt and we can use a Consecration Slam to cause an ignition. And while you're transcendent, your grenades will stun both champions. You have a ton of ad clearing potential, adding in a ton of extra damage from Weaken, Jolt, Unravel, and even volatile rounds. And for you Hunter mains out there, in my opinion, Hunters are the worst class to use Ergo Sum with, but they still feel strong. While invisibility does mean more survivability, it also kind of contradicts the sword gameplay style. So for your super, I tend to bring Tether, which is a good all-around option for both bosses and ad clearing. I like to bring Stylus Executioner paired with Winter Shroud to have ways to consistently go invisible. And that's also why I bring Duskfield Grenade and Threaded Spike, though you could swap out Threaded Spike for Combination Blow if you want to have a way to gain immediate health back. For fragments, I pair that with Facet of Protection for the extra damage resistance and Facet of Purpose to get that extra bit of survivability. Then I bring Facet of Bravery, so again we can generate those volatile rounds by using our grenades. And when we use that powered melee, we're creating unraveling rounds for our strand weapons. And I also bring Facet of Honor, so that again we can use tangles to generate even more darkness energy for your transcendence. And we top it all off with Facet of Ruin to deal extra shatter damage from all of those sources of shatter. And with this build, Overload and Unstoppable champions are also fairly easy to deal with, since you have a ton of ways to slow and freeze enemies. You tend to deal a bit more darkness damage than Titans do, which leads to going Transcendent more often. And for those Warlock mains out there, well, Warlocks are by far the best class to use Ergo Sum with. The main reason being the aspect Feed the Void. A lot of Titan and Hunter builds revolve around using a powered melee, which is hard to do with a sword, or going invisible to heal. Warlocks can use Feed the Void to gain Devour, which means as long as you keep killing, you won't die. And a lot of these Ergo Sum rolls are are excellent for ad clearing. You also get the added bonus of more grenade energy, which is easily usable when you're running a sword. For your super, you want to either bring Nova Bomb with the Spirit of Star Eater for burst DPS, or Song of Flame for team benefit and survivability. I then like to bring Helion to consistently deal more damage, but you could alternatively bring Bleak Watcher to create turrets that will feed your Darkness Transcendent energy. Since we have Devour feeding us a ton of grenade energy, I bring the Vortex Grenade paired with Facet of Dominance to have our grenades weaken enemies. I then bring Facet of Courage and the Arcane Needle so that our grenades and supers will deal more damage just by using a melee beforehand. I then bring Facet of Protection for the extra damage resistance and Facet of Honor to again use Tangles to create even more Darkness Transcendent energy. And finally, I bring Facet of Bravery so that we can use those grenades for the volatile rounds for Void Ergo Sums, and the powered melees for unraveling rounds for your strand weapons. While champions are slightly harder to take care of on Warlocks, all you have to do is pop your Transcendence so that your grenade will stun both Overload and Unstoppable champions. Using Ergo Sum as your main weapon leads to going Transcendent constantly, giving you a ton of added damage and ad clearing potential, not to mention more ammo and even champion stunning ability. I've been flying through GMs with Ergo Sum and these builds and been having a blast while doing so. If you found this video helpful or just enjoyed seeing a new perspective, feel free to like the video and comment down below which role you're going for on Ergo Sum. Keep an eye out for future videos as we continue to explore the ever-evolving world of Destiny 2. Until then, may the threads of fate be ever in your favor. This is Lucky Mech, signing off. See you on the next adventure, Guardians.